The door burst open. Novi Palmer charged through it like her life depended on it, because it did. She slammed it shut, twisted the lock, and pressed her back against the wood, chest heaving, wedding dress billowing around her like a surrender flag. Safe. Finally, safe. And then she turned around. Her scream caught in her throat. A man stood in the middle of the hotel suite, fresh from the bathroom, with nothing but a thin white towel wrapped dangerously low around his hips. Water droplets traced lazy paths down skin so dark and smooth it seemed to glow under the afternoon light. Rich ebony that looked like it had been kissed by the sun and polished to perfection. His chest was broad, carved with lean muscle that spoke of discipline, not vanity. Short dreads hung over his forehead, dripping water onto a face that made Novi's brain short-circuit. High cheekbones sharp enough to cut glass. A jaw that could have been sculpted by Michelangelo. Full lips pressed into a hard, disapproving line. And beneath those lips, the shadow of stubble that somehow made him look even more devastatingly attractive. But it was his eyes that truly stopped her heart. They were black, not brown, not dark brown. Black, like polished obsidian, like ink dropped into midnight. And beneath them, shadows so deep and dark they looked painted on. The kind of shadows that came from years of sleepless nights and secrets too heavy to carry. He was tall, impossibly tall. The kind of tall that made Novi, at 5'3", feel like a doll who had wandered into a giant's castle. His shoulders were broad and even half-naked and dripping wet. He radiated an authority that made her want to apologize for existing. Oh my God, Novi thought, her brain finally catching up with her eyes. He's beautiful. He's terrifying. He's beautifully terrifying. For a full 3 seconds, neither of them moved. Then those black eyes swept over her. The wedding dress, the smeared makeup, the wild hair escaping its elaborate pins, and his expression shifted from shock to something far more dangerous. Pure, undiluted annoyance. "Who?" he said, his voice deep and rough like gravel wrapped in velvet. "The heck are you?" Novi's hands flew up to cover her eyes. "I'm so sorry. I didn't know anyone was... The door was unlocked and I needed somewhere to hide and... You're in a wedding dress. Yes? In my hotel room. Yes? Hiding. Yes?" A pause. Heavy, judgmental. "Are you planning to keep your hands over your eyes forever, or are you going to actually explain yourself?" Novi peeked through her fingers. He had pulled on a robe, black silk, because of course it was, and was now regarding her with the expression of a man who had found a particularly confusing stain on his very expensive carpet. Even in a bathrobe, he was magnificent. The silk clung to his damp shoulders, outlining the breadth of them. His dreads dripped water onto the collar, and Novi found herself irrationally fixated on a single droplet that rolled down his neck and disappeared beneath the fabric. "Focus, Novi. You're running for your life, not auditing attractive men." "I'm running away from my wedding," she blurted. His eyebrow lifted. Just one. It was annoyingly, unfairly attractive. I gathered that much. "And I burst into random rooms trying to find somewhere safe, and one room had a couple doing things, and another room had an old lady in a face mask who screamed like I was a thief, and then I found your door unlocked and..." "You thought a stranger's hotel room was safe?" Novi faltered. When he put it like that, it did sound insane. "I wasn't thinking clearly." Evidently. His tone was flat. Clinical. Like he was observing a mildly interesting specimen rather than a desperate woman in a wedding dress. What is wrong with this man? Novi thought. Most people would show some concern, some emotion, something, anything. But his face was as blank as a marble statue. Beautiful, devastatingly beautiful, but cold. Bang, bang, bang. Novi's heart stopped. "Mr. Zach. Open up!" Zach. The man's name was Zach. "Your uncle's bride has escaped," a guard shouted through the door. "We're searching every room by his orders." Uncle. The word hit Novi like a bucket of ice water. This man, this impossibly tall, impossibly gorgeous, impossibly cold man, was Desmond Brown's nephew. and she had just trapped herself in his room. The man, Zach, that's what the guards had called him, looked at the door, then at Novi, then back at the door. Tears filled her eyes as she put her hands together to beg with trembling lips. "Please, don't expose me. I don't want this wedding. It's not my choice, please." His jaw tightened. "Stay there," he ordered, his voice low. "Don't move. Don't speak." He walked toward the door, and Novi pressed herself against the wall, heart pounding so hard she could feel it in her throat. "Please," she whispered desperately. "Please don't turn me in. Please, please, please." Zach opened the door just enough to block the view inside. From her angle, Novi could see the sharp line of his profile, the tension in his shoulders. "What?" His voice could have frozen the Sahara. "Mr. Brown, your uncle's bride, has escaped. Yes, I heard. The entire hotel heard. Half of Chicago probably heard." His tone dripped with boredom. "What does that have to do with me?" "We need to search every room, sir. Mr. Desmond's orders." There was a pause. Novi held her breath so hard her lungs burned. "You want to search my room?" "Sir, we have orders." Zach pulled out his phone and dialed. His movements were unhurried, casual, like he had all the time in the world. "Uncle Desmond, your men are at my door. I demanding to search my room like I'm a common criminal. I was in the shower when they started pounding. Do you really believe I'm hiding your runaway bride in my bathroom?" Silence. Novi watched Zach's lips curve into a thin, humorless smile. "That's what I thought." He held out the phone to the guard. Even from across the room, Novi could hear Desmond's voice booming through the speaker. "Get away from my nephew's door. You know how he is with women. Search the other floors, now." The guards apologized profusely, stumbling over their words, and retreated down the hallway. Zach closed the door. Relief flooded through Novi like warm water. Her knees went weak. Tears pricked her eyes. "Thank you," she gasped. "Thank you so much. I don't know how to—" And then her nose started to tickle. No, something in the air, and the steam still wafting from the bathroom. The lingering scent of— Oh no, 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 no. Novi sneezed. Loud, explosive. The kind of sneeze that echoed off walls and announced your presence to everyone within a 5-mile radius. Then she coughed. Once. Twice. Her throat tightened. Her eyes watered. "What's wrong with you?" Zach demanded. "Your shampoo." Another violent cough. "I'm allergic to—" A sneeze that nearly bent her double. "Strong fragrances, certain chemicals." Bang, bang, bang. "Mr. Brown, we heard a woman. Open this door." Zach whirled on her, and his black eyes blazed with a fury that made Novi shrink back against the wall. "I'm sorry," she choked out between coughs. I can't help it." The door burst open. 2 guards charged inside, and their eyes went wide when they saw Novi. Wedding dress, tear-stained face, coughing like she was dying. "Sir," one guard said slowly, disbelief dripping from every syllable. That's the bride. The one who's supposed to marry Mr. Desmond Brown." Silence. The guards looked at Zach. Zach looked at the guards. Novi coughed and wished the floor would open up and swallow her whole. "Sir," the second guard stepped forward. "We need to take her back to the ceremony. Your uncle is waiting. He's very upset." "I'm sure he is. So if you'll just step aside—" "No." The word hung in the air like a blade. Both guards blinked. "Sir?" "I said no." Zach stepped forward, and despite wearing nothing but a bathrobe, he radiated more authority than both armed guards combined. "You're not taking her anywhere." "But sir, Mr. Desmond specifically ordered—" "I don't care what my uncle ordered." He moved to stand in front of Novi, a wall of muscle and cold fury between her and the men who wanted to drag her back to her nightmare. "Tell my uncle the wedding is off. Tell him his bride won't be walking down any aisle today." "Sir, he's going to want to know why." "Because she's mine." The words dropped like bombs. Novi's mouth fell open. The guards stared. Even the air seemed to freeze. "She's yours, sir?" Guard 1 looked like his brain was short-circuiting. Did I stutter? Zach's voice was ice. This woman belongs to me, has for years. Whatever arrangement my uncle made with her stepfather is null and void. Now get out of my sight and deliver that message before I have security escort you out of this hotel. The guards exchanged bewildered looks. Sir, now! They practically fell over each other, scrambling down the hallway. The moment they disappeared, Zach slammed the door, locked it, and turned on Novi with murder in his eyes. I just defied my uncle for you. You have 30 seconds to explain yourself, or I'll throw you back to the wolves. Novi nodded, swallowing the lump in her throat with difficulty. But wait, how did Novi end up bursting into a stranger's hotel room in a wedding dress? And why is she running from a marriage to one of Chicago's wealthiest men? Before I tell you, hit that subscribe button and ring that notification bell. This story has secrets, tension, and a slow burn romance that's going to set your screen on fire. Trust me, you want to be here for all of it. Now let's rewind to where this chaos began. 4 hours earlier, the bridal suite. The woman in the mirror was a beautiful stranger. Novi Palmer stared at her reflection, trying to find herself beneath the layers of professional makeup and the elaborate updo studded with pearls and crystals. The dress was stunning. Sweetheart neckline, hand-sewn Swarovski crystals, a train that stretched 6 feet behind her like a bridal shadow. She looked like she belonged on the cover of a wedding magazine. She felt like she was being buried alive. 4 hours, she thought numbly. In 4 hours, I'll be Mrs. Desmond Brown, wife to a man old enough to be my father, a property of a stranger who paid for me like livestock at an auction. Her hands trembled against the cold glass. Mama, I'm so sorry. You trusted the wrong man, and now I'm paying for it. Miranda Palmer had been dead for 2 years, but Novi still heard her voice sometimes, soft and warm, full of hope that the world didn't deserve. Vernon will take care of you, Miranda had whispered from her hospital bed, her hand frail as paper in Novi's grip. Cancer had hollowed her out, turned her into a shadow of the vibrant woman she'd once been. He promised me, baby. He'll make sure you're safe. Novi had smiled and nodded and lied, because that's what you did for dying mothers. You gave them comfort. You gave them peace. You gave them beautiful, beautiful lies. But the truth? Vernon Cross was a snake wearing human skin. And he'd married Miranda for her modest savings and her life insurance policy. He'd tolerated Novi because she kept the house clean and didn't cause trouble. And the moment Miranda was buried, he'd revealed his true face, cruel and calculating and utterly without conscience. The savings vanished into poker games. The life insurance disappeared into investments that never materialized. Within a year, Vernon had gambled himself into a hole so deep that not even his lies could fill it. $4 million. That's what he owed Desmond Brown, a wealthy businessman with silver hair and expensive tastes, including a taste for women young enough to be his daughters. And Vernon, ever resourceful, had offered the only thing of value he had left, his stepdaughter. You'll marry him, Vernon had said 3 months ago, his watery eyes cold as a shark's. Or I'll destroy you. I'll ruin your reputation. I'll make sure no one in this city ever gives you a job, a chance, a second look. You think you're going to sing your way out of poverty? He'd laughed, mean and ugly. Try getting a record deal when I'm done with your name. Novi had tried everything legal. Police, lawyers, shelters. None of it worked. Vernon had connections. Desmond had money. Together, they'd blocked every exit until marriage was the only door left. But today, Novi had decided to make her own door. Knock, knock, knock. Miss Palmer, the ceremony begins in 15 minutes. Mr. Brown is expecting you. Novi stared at the door. 2 armed guards stood on the other side. She could see their shadows through the gap at the bottom. They weren't protection. They were prison bars. Go well, she thought, squaring her shoulders. Let's see how well those bars hold. She cracked the door open and let her face crumble into an expression of mortified embarrassment. I'm so sorry, she said, her voice small and panicked. I need help. It's a feminine emergency. The guard's expressions shifted from professional to deeply uncomfortable. A what? Guard 1 asked. You know. Novi let her voice climb toward hysteria. A woman's emergency. I need products, pads, tampons. She paused for effect. The heavy flow kind, right now. Guard 2 looked like he wanted to melt through the floor. We can't leave our post. It's already on the dress. Novi's voice cracked dramatically. Do you want to explain to Mr. Brown why his bride walked down the aisle with a stain? Do you want to tell him you refused to help me when I begged for basic feminine hygiene? Both guards' faces drained of color. We'll find something, Guard 1 stammered. Hurry! They practically sprinted down the hallway. The moment they vanished around the corner, Novi moved. Running in a wedding dress was like trying to sprint through quicksand while dragging a parachute. The skirt caught on everything. Door handles, furniture corners, a decorative plant that crashed to the floor behind her with a spectacular bang. The noise echoed through the hallway like a starting gun. Move, faster, faster. Novi found a service corridor and ducked inside, pressing herself against the wall as 2 hotel staff members walked past, arguing about whose turn it was to restock the minibar. Her heart was a war drum in her chest. Her lungs screamed for air. Her elaborate updo was disintegrating, pins scattering behind her like breadcrumbs in a fairy tale. The service exit. If I can just reach... She's gone. The bride is gone. No, 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 no. Voices erupted through the hallways. Footsteps thundered on marble. Find her, search every floor, block every exit, Mr. Brown's orders. Novi ran faster, the ridiculous dress billowing behind her. She tried door after door, looking for a hopefully vacant suite she could hide in locked. Locked. Finally, one opened. She burst inside and found a middle-aged couple in an extremely compromising position. The woman screamed loud enough to shatter windows. The man scrambled for a pillow, his face turning the color of a ripe tomato. What the? Get out! Get out! Sorry, my wrong room! Novi slammed the door and kept running. Footsteps behind her. Closer, louder, another door. She grabbed the handle and pushed. An elderly woman in a green face mask and curlers stood in the entrance, a tiny dog tucked under one arm. Her eyes went wide as saucers. Intruder! She grabbed a can of hairspray and pointed it at Novi like a weapon. Help! Security! This woman is trying to steal from me. I'm not stealing from anyone. Novi slammed the door and ran. The footsteps were right behind her now, voices shouting, radios crackling. One more door. Please, just one more. She grabbed the handle of the last door in the hallway, turned it. It opened. She threw herself inside, slammed it shut, untwisted the lock. And that was how she came face to face with the most devastatingly handsome man she'd ever seen in her entire life. Back to the present. Do you have any idea what you just made me do? I didn't mean to. My allergies. Your allergies just forced me to lie to my uncle. He ran a hand through his damp dreads, frustration radiating from every line of his body. I told him you're mine. What does that even mean? How am I supposed to explain that? I don't know, but I didn't want this marriage. You should have fought harder. The words hit Novi like a slap. Excuse me? You heard me. Zach's voice was cold, clinical. You're being forced into marriage and your solution was to run? To hide? Did you try anything else? Did you stand up for yourself? Did you fight? You don't know what I've been through. Then tell me. He stepped closer, and Novi had to crane her neck to meet his eyes. He was so tall. What's the worst your stepfather could have done if you refused? Hit you? Disown you? Throw you out on the street? All of those options are better than marrying a man you don't love, but guess you're too pampered to take the rough way out and came to stress me out instead. Novi's eyes flashed. 2 years of suppressed anger bubbled to the surface. You want to know what he did? Her voice shook, but not from fear, from rage. He isolated me. He cut me off from every friend I had, every family member who might have helped. He intercepted my mail, monitored my phone calls, controlled every penny I touched. He told me that if I didn't cooperate, he would make sure I never worked in this city again. He has connections, Mr. Brown. powerful connections. And I have nothing. No money, no support, no one who cared enough to help. She stepped closer to him, jabbing a finger at his chest. So don't you dare stand there in your expensive robe in your expensive hotel suite and tell me I didn't fight hard enough. I fought every single day for 2 years. I fought until I had nothing left. And today, I decided that if I couldn't escape through the system, I would escape through the chaos. So yes, I ran. Yes, I hid. And yes, I ended up in your bathroom. But I am not weak, and I will not let you or anyone else tell me otherwise. Silence. Zach stared at her. His expression was unreadable. Then his phone buzzed. He glanced at the screen and his jaw tightened. My uncle is summoning us to the wedding hall, he said flatly. He wants answers. Novi's blood ran cold. Us? I told his guards you were mine. Now I have to explain what that means. He moved toward the closet and pulled out a garment bag. I suggest you make yourself presentable. We're about to walk into a lion's den. The wedding hall. The grand ballroom was stunning. A cathedral of luxury with crystal chandeliers, towering flower arrangements, and enough white silk to drown in. But the chairs were empty now. The guests had been sent away. The flowers were starting to wilt under the harsh overhead lights. And standing at the altar like a king awaiting tribute was Desmond Brown. Novi's first thought, against her will, was that he was handsome for his age. Silver hair swept back from a distinguished face. Gray eyes the color of storm clouds. Tall and well-built, dressed in an impeccable charcoal suit. He was 58, but he wore his age like armor. Powerful, commanding, the kind of man who had never heard the word no. According to street gossip, his first wife, Elizabeth, had died 3 years ago. Cancer, like Novi's mother. It had been a childless marriage. He'd spent a year mourning her, then decided he needed a new wife. Young enough to give him children, to continue the Brown family legacy. And that was how Novi became his target. Standing beside Desmond, practically vibrating with fury, was Vernon Cross. Her stepfather looked exactly as she remembered. Small, weasel-faced, with calculating eyes and thinning hair slicked back with too much gel. His smile was the smile of a man who saw people as commodities. Like so. Desmond's voice was smooth as aged bourbon. You had the guts to turn my wedding into a circus. Zach stood stiff as a soldier beside Novi, his hands clasped behind his back. He'd changed into a tailored black suit that fit him like a second skin, and with his dreads brushed back from his face, his sharp features were on full display. He looked like a CEO about to deliver a hostile takeover. Novi lingered a step behind him, acutely aware that she was still in her ruined wedding dress, though she'd managed to fix her hair and wipe most of the mascara from her cheeks. She's lying, Vernon sputtered, his face purple. Whatever she told you, it's lies. She's a manipulative little... Quiet. Desmond didn't raise his voice, but Vernon's mouth snapped shut instantly. I want to hear from my nephew. His gray eyes fixed on Zach. Zachary, my men tell me you claim this woman is yours. What exactly did you mean by that? The question hung in the air like a guillotine blade. Zach's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. Novi and I have history, he said, his voice flat. We knew each other years ago, before you made your arrangement with Mr. Cross. Vernon nearly exploded. Impossible! I've never seen this man in my... I didn't tell you everything about my life, Vernon. Novi stepped forward, her voice steady despite her pounding heart. You never cared enough to ask. Vernon sputtered, but Desmond held up a hand for silence. History, he repeated slowly. He studied his nephew's face with sharp, assessing eyes. What kind of history? We were close. Zach's voice was mechanical, rehearsed. We lost touch when I moved away for business. When I saw her today, when I realized she was the woman you were marrying, I couldn't allow it. You couldn't allow it? No. The single word echoed through the empty ballroom. Desmond was quiet for a long moment. Then, to Novi's surprise, he began to smile. Zachary, he said softly, in all the years I've known you, you have never shown interest in any woman. Zach said nothing. Girls threw themselves at you in college. Beautiful women, brilliant women, wealthy women. You rejected every single one. Desmond stepped closer to his nephew. Not cruelly. You were always polite, but firmly, absolutely. Like the concept of romance was foreign to you. He paused, and something like sadness flickered across his distinguished features. After your father passed, after your mother left you at the funeral, you closed yourself off completely. You built an empire, became more successful than anyone expected. But you became cold, Zachary. Distant. He sighed heavily. Elizabeth worried about you most of all. Before she died, she made me promise to look after you, to help you find happiness. Novi felt her chest tighten. His mother had left him at his father's funeral? I failed her in that, Desmond continued. When you showed no interest in marriage, in children, in building a family, I decided to take matters into my own hands. I would marry a young woman, have children, ensure our family's legacy continued. He looked at Novi, then back at Zach. But now you're telling me there's a woman you care about? A woman worth disrupting my wedding for? His smile widened, genuine this time. Prove it. Novi's stomach dropped. Prove it? If you two have history, if you care about each other the way you claim, a simple embrace should be easy. Desmond's gray eyes glittered with something like hope. Hug her, kiss her, anything, Zachary, right now. Show me this great passion you apparently feel. Zach didn't move. His shoulders were rigid, his hands clenched behind his back, his face a perfect mask of nothing. But Novi could see the tension radiating from every line of his body. He can't do it, she realized with growing horror. He doesn't like being touched. This is going to fall apart. Vernon stepped forward, triumph gleaming in his small eyes. You see? He can't do it. He's lying. They're both lying. Zachary? Desmond's voice was quiet but demanding. Zach still didn't move. Novi's mind raced. If they failed this test, everything was over. Vernon would drag her back. Desmond would demand his bride. Her one chance at freedom would crumble. I have to do something now. She stepped forward and slipped her hand into Zach's. His entire body went rigid. She felt his fingers twitch, felt the instinct to pull away ripple through him like an electric shock. But she held on tight. Please, she thought desperately. Please just play along. Baby, she said, forcing her voice into something light and teasing. You know how you are. Don't make this awkward. She turned to Desmond with her most convincing smile. He's always been like this, absolutely hopeless with public affection. Even when we were together, I had to practically beg for hand-holding. She laughed, and it came out surprisingly natural. It's not personal. He's just wired differently. He shows love in other ways. Is that so? Absolutely. Novi leaned into Zach's side, ignoring how stiff he'd become. She could feel the warmth of him through his suit jacket, could smell his cologne, something clean and expensive and dangerously appealing. Focus, Novi. Zach isn't about grand gestures, she continued. He's about loyalty, about showing up when it matters, about the small things nobody else notices. She looked up at him, and their eyes met. His black gaze was intense, unreadable, boring into her like he was trying to solve a puzzle he'd never encountered before. Right, baby? She prompted softly. A muscle ticked in his jaw. Then slowly, so slowly she almost missed it, his arm moved. His hand came up and settled on the small of her back. The touch was stiff, mechanical, like he was following instructions from a manual. But it was something. And despite the circumstances, despite the danger, despite everything, Novi felt a shiver run down her spine at his touch. Right, Zach said quietly. Desmond watched them with sharp eyes. The silence stretched like a rubber band about to snap. Then he laughed. It was a genuine laugh, warm and surprised, and it transformed his face from distinguished to almost kind. Well, well, he murmured. I never thought I'd see the day. He turned to Vernon, whose face was cycling through various shades of purple. The wedding is off, Mr. Cross. Vernon looked like he was about to stroke out. But the debt, the arrangement. The arrangement was for your stepdaughter to marry a Brown. Desmond's smile turned calculating. So it doesn't have to be me. Novi's blood ran cold. What? The venue is paid for. The officiant is still here. Everything is ready. His gray eyes sparkled with sudden excitement. Marry her, Zachary. Today. Right now. Uncle, Zach started. And, Desmond continued, turning to Vernon, if Novi remains married to my nephew for 5 years, long enough to start a family, I'll consider your debt paid in full. Vernon's eyes went wide. The whole $4 million? Every cent. Vernon looked like he'd won the lottery. Novi felt like she was drowning. Married. To a stranger. For 5 years. Zach opened his mouth to say something. Novi could tell from his expression that he was about to protest. She quickly grabbed his arm, cutting off whatever he had been about to say. Excuse us. Novi pulled him toward a side door. The moment they were alone in the small anteroom, she released him and stepped back. I'm sorry, she said quickly. I know this is insane, but please agree to... He cut her off. You're asking me to marry you. I'm asking you to help me. One more time. Her voice cracked. I know I have no right. I know we just met. But please, please, just consider it. You want me to spend 5 years married to a complete stranger. I won't bother you, I swear. The words tumbled out desperately. I'll stay completely out of your way. It'll be a marriage in name only. You can even date other women if... I don't date women. Novi paused. Oh, are you... gay? No. The word was sharp. I'm not gay. Then, I don't date anyone. I don't form romantic attachments. I don't understand them. He began to pace, his long legs eating up the small room. The games, the expectations, the constant need for emotional validation. It's exhausting, inefficient. I've tried it, and it never works. Novi watched him pace. There was something almost vulnerable in how he described his isolation. Not proud, just resigned. Is that why your mother left? She asked quickly. Zach stopped. His back was to her. My mother left because she couldn't handle grief, he said flatly. My father died when I was 16. At the funeral, she looked at me and decided she couldn't be my mother anymore. Said I was too much like him. That she couldn't bear to see his face in mine every day. He paused. I never saw her again. Novi's heart cracked. Zach, don't. He turned around, expression closed off. I don't need sympathy. I need solutions. He crossed his arms. Look, I've done more than enough. I lied to my uncle. I disrupted his wedding. Marriage is too far. There has to be another way. There isn't. How much does your stepfather owe my uncle? The sudden shift threw her. $4 million. Zach nodded once. I'll pay it. What? The debt. I'll pay it. Right now. He said it like $4 million was spare change. That clears your obligation. Your stepfather can't force you to marry anyone if there's no debt. Novi stared at him. You would pay $4 million for someone you met an hour ago? It's money. I have more than I need. He moved toward the door. Come on, let's end this. Back in the wedding hall, Zach wasted no time. Uncle Desmond, marriage isn't necessary. Desmond's face fell. My, Zachary? I'll pay Mr. Cross's debt, right now. Zach pulled out a checkbook. $4 million. Vernon's eyes nearly popped from his skull. Zach wrote the check with quick, precise strokes, tore it free, and handed it to his uncle. The debt is cleared. Novi is free. Desmond took the check slowly, disappointment evident on his face. I was hoping... I know. Zach's voice softened slightly. But I'm not ready for marriage. This is the best I can offer. Vernon lunged for the check, but Desmond held it back. This goes toward the debt, Desmond said coolly. Not into your pocket for gambling. Yes, yes, of course. Vernon dropped to his knees, grabbing at Zach's pant leg. Thank you. You're a saint. Get up. Zach stepped back, disgust flickering across his face. You're embarrassing yourself. He turned and walked toward the exit. Novi gathered her dress and hurried after him. Wait. He stopped but didn't turn. Please, she said softly. Let me repay you. I can cook, clean, organize anything. Let me work for you. Zach's black eyes swept over her. That won't be necessary. Please. Her voice dropped to a whisper. I don't have anywhere else to go. Before he could respond, a hand clamped down on Novi's arm. Actually, Vernon's oily voice cut in. She does have somewhere to go. His grip was bruising, his eyes gleaming with ugly triumph. The debt's paid. That means she's mine again. He yanked her toward him. Come on, girl. We're going home. Home. Back to that prison. Back to Vernon's control. No. The word escaped before she could stop it. Vernon's face darkened. What did you say? I said no. Novi tried to pull free. Let go of me. You ungrateful. Let go of her. Zach's voice cut through like a blade of ice. Vernon froze. Zach stepped forward, his tall frame looming, his black eyes burning. Who gave you permission to touch her? She's my stepdaughter. I don't care. His voice was soft, but the threat was unmistakable. Let go. Vernon's hand fell away. Zach looked at Novi, really looked at her. At the fear in her eyes, the red marks forming on her wrist. You paid the debt, Vernon sputtered. She comes home with... No. Zach's voice was final. I paid $4 million. That bought me the right to make decisions here. She's not going anywhere with you. He turned to Novi. Get your things. You're coming with me. He turned and walked away. Novi stood frozen for a heartbeat. Then she gathered her ruined dress and followed him. Away from Vernon. Into the unknown. Zenith Estate. That evening, the mansion was obscene. Novi stood in the grand foyer, neck craned to take in the soaring ceilings, the crystal chandeliers, the artwork that definitely belonged in museums. Marble floors reflected her bedraggled image back at her. She was still in the ruined dress. She had nothing else, with smeared makeup and collapsed hair. She looked like a disaster. She felt like one, too. Welcome to your new home, Zach said flatly. Or workplace, however you prefer. Before Novi could respond, a sharp voice cut through the air. So, you're the runaway bride. A woman emerged from a doorway. Middle-aged, maybe 50, and with silver-streaked hair in a severe bun and eyes that could curdle milk. Her apron was spotless, her posture military perfect, her expression radiating judgment. This is Maeve, Zach said, the chef, the only female staff member here. Maeve looked Novi up and down like she was inspecting spoiled meat. She said. Just, But she loaded so much disdain into that syllable it felt like a full paragraph of insults. Maeve, Novi will be staying here, working. Make sure she has appropriate quarters, clothes, and everything she needs to settle in. Maeve's eyes narrowed. And what exactly will her duties be? Whatever needs doing. Zach was already moving toward the staircase. I'll leave the specifics to you. Wait, Novi called. Where do I sleep? What are my responsibilities? Zach stopped but didn't turn. Stay out of my way, he said. Do your work. Don't bother me unless the house is on fire. How will I know what counts as an emergency? If you have to ask, it isn't one. And then he was gone. Maeve's smile was razor thin. Follow me. I'll show you to your quarters. The way she said it made it sound like a dungeon. That night at 2 a.m., Novi couldn't sleep. Her room was beautiful, 3 times the size of her old one, with a comfortable bed and a window overlooking manicured gardens. But her mind wouldn't stop racing. At 2 a.m., she gave up and slipped out. The mansion was silent, watchful, full of secrets. Novi found herself wandering, drawn by an impulse she couldn't name. She discovered a balcony. The doors were open, letting in cool night air. And standing at the railing, staring at the moon, was Zach. He wore a green sweater and dark pants, His dreads were loose, falling past his shoulders. He stood perfectly still, like a statue waiting for something. "You don't sleep either." The words left her mouth before she could stop them. Zach turned his head slightly. "I told you to stay out of my way." "I know. I couldn't sleep and I was wandering and—" She started backing away. "I'll go." "Wait." The words stopped her cold. He turned fully. In the moonlight, the shadows under his eyes looked even deeper. "You said either," he said, "as if you expected me to have trouble sleeping. The circles under your eyes, they're pretty severe. Insomnia. I've had it for years." "Since your father died?" His expression flickered. "Does it matter?" "Maybe." Novi stepped onto the balcony, keeping careful distance. "My mother had terrible insomnia after my real father died. She'd pace the house for hours." "How did she cope?" Novi smiled softly. "Me. I helped her." "You?" "I used to sing to her. Every night when she couldn't sleep. Old songs, lullabies. Eventually, her eyes would close and she'd drift off." Zach was watching her intently now. Those black eyes held something new. Interest. Curiosity. "You sing?" "Yes, or I used to. I haven't sung for anyone since she died." "Why not?" "Because there was no one left who wanted to hear." Silence stretched between them. Then Zach said something that made her heart stutter. "Sing for me." Novi stared at him. "What?" "You said you helped your mother sleep by singing." His voice was flat, but beneath it was something almost vulnerable. "I haven't slept properly in 14 years. Nothing works." He paused. "Sing for me." Novi studied his face. The sharp cheekbones, the tired eyes. The walls built so high no one could climb them. He wasn't commanding. He was asking, because he was desperate. "Okay," she whispered. "Close your eyes." She couldn't trust her voice not to shake if he was looking at her. He hesitated, then obeyed. Novi took a breath, and she sang. It started as barely a whisper, a soft hum carried on the night breeze, an old melody her mother used to love. No words at first, just sound. Her voice rose gradually, gaining warmth and color. It wasn't trained. She'd never afforded lessons, but it was true. Clear as spring water, warm as honey in sunlight, rich with an emotion that seemed to come from somewhere deeper than her throat. And the notes wrapped around them both like a blanket. Then the words came.
"When the stars forget to shine and the moon hides her face, when the world grows dark and cold, love will find a place."
Her voice swelled, filling the balcony with sound that made the moonlight itself seem to shimmer. Each note was a confession. Each word was a prayer. "Close your eyes, let go of fear. The night won't last forever, my dear." She watched his face as she sang. The tension in his jaw slowly released. His rigid shoulders softened. His breathing deepened, slowed. "And when the dawn breaks through the gray, I'll be here. I'll always stay." The last note hung like a held breath before fading into silence. For a long moment, neither moved. Then Zach opened his eyes. He looked at her like he was seeing her for the first time. Your voice," he said quietly. "What about it?" "It's not just beautiful." He paused, searching for words, something that clearly didn't come easily. "It's transcendent, like you're translating emotions into sound." Heat rose to Novi's cheeks. "It's just singing." "No." His black eyes held hers. "It's not. I've heard professional singers. None of them made me feel what you just made me feel." "What did I make you feel?" He was quiet. "Safe," he said finally. "For the first time in 14 years, I felt safe." The word hung between them like a bridge. Novi didn't know what to say. "Is that what you wanted to do?" Zach asked. "Before Vernon? Singing?" She laughed softly. Wanted? Yes. Could afford to pursue? No. And now? Now I'm working as a maid in a billionaire's mansion. She shrugged. Dreams don't really factor in anymore. Zach studied her for a long moment. I have connections in the music industry, he said matter-of-factly. Producers, label executives. If you want to pursue singing, I can make introductions. Novi's heart skipped. You would do that? You helped me tonight, more than anything has in 14 years. He turned back to the railing. Consider it repayment. Novi stared at his profile, the strong jaw, the dreads falling over his shoulder. Actually, she said softly, if you really want to sleep, I could sing more, somewhere more comfortable. He turned. What do you mean? My mother always fell asleep best when she was lying down. Maybe if you were in your bed, actually trying to sleep while I sang? She trailed off, suddenly embarrassed. What am I doing? I'm inviting myself to his bedroom? He's going to think I'm… Fine. She blinked. What? Fine. He pushed off the railing. Follow me. Novi's mouth fell open when they entered Zach's bedroom. If she thought the guest room was impressive, Zach's master bedroom was on another level entirely. It was massive, easily the size of her entire childhood apartment. Dark wood floors, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the gardens, a fireplace that could roast a small elephant. The color scheme was all deep grays and blacks, masculine and minimal, with artwork that looked like it cost more than the average person's salary. But the bed, it was enormous. A California king, at least, maybe bigger, with charcoal sheets and a headboard that stretched nearly to the ceiling. It looked like something a king would sleep in, or a god. Like you can sit there, Zach said, gesturing to an armchair near the bed. Novi nodded, trying to act like she wasn't mentally cataloging every detail of this room to replay later. His bedroom. I'm in his bedroom. This is fine. This is completely fine. Zach crossed to the bed and sat on the edge, still fully clothed. He looked uncomfortable, not with her presence, but with the vulnerability of what he was about to do. You don't have to do this, he said. I want to. The words came out before she could stop them. His eyes met hers. Something passed between them. Something neither of them could name. Okay, he said quietly. He lay back against the pillows, his dreads spreading around his head like a dark halo. He stared at the ceiling for a moment, then closed his eyes. Novi settled into the armchair. It was more comfortable than most beds she'd slept in. She took a breath, and she sang. This time, she sang softer, more intimate. Songs meant for quiet rooms and tired hearts. She sang about rivers and mountains and finding your way home. She sang about stars that guided lost travelers. She sang about love that waited, patient and eternal. And as she sang, she watched Zach's face transform. The tension melted from his features. His breathing deepened. The furrow between his brows, that permanent line of worry, smoothed out until he looked almost peaceful. So young. He's beautiful, she thought. So beautiful when he's not trying to keep everyone at arm's length. She sang for nearly an hour, one song flowing into the next, her voice growing softer and softer until it was barely a whisper. At some point, she realized his breathing had become deep and even. He was asleep. Actually, asleep. Novi smiled, warmth flooding her chest. She should leave. Go back to her room, let him rest. But the chair was so comfortable, and her eyes were so heavy. And she'd had such a long, insane, impossible day. Just for a minute, she thought. I'll just close my eyes for a minute. The warmth of sunlight kissing her skin the next morning roused her. Novi blinked awake slowly, confused about where she was. The ceiling was wrong. The sheets were too soft. Everything smelled like expensive cologne and… sheets. Her eyes flew open. She was in a bed. Not the armchair. A bed. An enormous, impossibly comfortable bed with charcoal sheets. Zach's bed. She was lying in Zach's bed, See, covered with a soft blanket that definitely hadn't been there when she fell asleep in the chair. Novi sat up so fast she nearly gave herself whiplash. The other side of the bed was empty, the sheets barely disturbed. A note sat on the pillow. She grabbed it with trembling fingers. Had to leave for work early. You fell asleep in the chair. You looked uncomfortable. Don't read too much into this. Zed. Novi stared at the note. Then at the bed. Then back at the note. He moved me. He picked me up and put me in his bed and covered me with a blanket. The image hit her like a truck. Zach, half asleep himself, scooping her out of the chair, carrying her to the bed, tucking the blanket around her shoulders, being gentle. A squeal escaped her throat, high-pitched and utterly undignified. She clamped her hands over her mouth, but it was too late. The sound echoed in the empty room. Oh my God, oh my God. She flopped back onto the pillows, hugging the blanket to her chest like a teenage girl who'd just been smiled at by her crush. He carried me. He carried me. Those arms that looked like they could bench press a car actually picked me up and… She squealed again, muffled this time by the pillow. Don't read too much into this, the note said. Too late. She was reading everything into it. Novi sat up again, trying to compose herself. She was a grown woman, a practical woman. She should not be squealing like a schoolgirl because a man put her in a bed. But then she pictured it again. His strong arms lifting her, his careful hands tucking the blanket, and another squeal threatened to escape. Maybe, she thought, a hope blooming in her chest like a flower after rain. Maybe he's not as cold as he pretends to be. Maybe there's something there. Something real. She pressed the note to her heart. Maybe I can actually make him like me back. It was a dangerous thought. A foolish thought. The kind of thought that got hearts broken and dreams shattered. But as Novi climbed out of Zach's bed, reluctantly because it was so comfortable and it smelled like him, she couldn't stop smiling. For the first time in years, the future didn't feel like a prison sentence. It felt like a possibility. Y'all, did you hear what just happened? This man, this cold, emotionally unavailable, I don't date anyone man, carried Novi to his bed and tucked her in. If you're squealing as hard as Novi right now, comment, he carried her, below. And if you think Zach is starting to catch feelings he doesn't understand, hit that subscribe button right now. Because next part is where everything changes. 3 weeks. That's how long Novi Palmer had been living in Zachary Brown's mansion. 3 weeks of marble floors and crystal chandeliers. 3 weeks of meals that cost more than her old monthly grocery budget. 3 weeks of sleeping in a bed so comfortable it felt like floating on clouds. And 3 weeks of Maeve trying to make her life a living hell. You missed a spot. Novi looked up from the floor she'd been scrubbing for the past hour. Maeve stood in the doorway of the West Wing bathroom, arms crossed, silver-streaked hair pulled back so tight it looked painful. Where? Novi asked, keeping her voice pleasant. Maeve pointed at a tile that was objectively spotless. There, do it again. Novi bit the inside of her cheek to keep from saying something she'd regret. Of course, she said sweetly. I'll make sure it's perfect. Maeve's eyes narrowed. She'd clearly been hoping for an argument, but she had nothing to work with. She turned on her heel and stalked away, her sensible shoes clicking against the marble. The moment she was gone, Novi slumped against the bathroom wall. 3 weeks, she thought. 3 weeks of this woman treating me like gum on her shoe. It had started small. Accidentally, forgetting to tell Novi about schedule changes, assigning her the worst tasks, scrubbing toilets, cleaning gutters, organizing storage rooms that hadn't been touched in decades. Then it escalated. Last week, Maeve had sent Novi to help with laundry, but conveniently forgot to mention that the industrial washing machine had a broken spin cycle. Novi had spent 4 hours hand-wringing sheets while Maeve watched from the doorway with barely concealed satisfaction. 2 days ago, Maeve had directed Novi to clean the blue room on the 3rd floor, which didn't exist. Novi had wandered the mansion for an hour before Winston, the kindly butler, found her and gently explained that there was no blue room. And yesterday was the worst. Maeve had asked Novi to taste test a soup she was preparing. Novi, thinking this was finally an olive branch, had eagerly agreed. The soup was approximately 90% cayenne pepper. Novi had spent 20 minutes coughing over the sink while Maeve watched with an expression of pure innocence. "Oh dear," she'd said. "I'm not sounding sorry at all. Did I add too much spice? My mistake." She hates me, Novi thought miserably. And I don't even know why. But she had her suspicions. The way Maeve's eyes lingered on Zach during meals. The way her voice softened when she spoke to him. The way her expression curdled every time Novi was in the same room as their employer. Maeve was in love with Zach, and she saw Novi as competition. Which is ridiculous, Novi told herself firmly. Zach barely looks at me. He barely looks at anyone. I'm just here. But even as she thought it, her mind drifted back to that morning 3 weeks ago. Waking up in his bed, the note on the pillow, the memory of being carried in his arms. Don't read too much into this. She'd been reading into it ever since. She had also developed a routine over the past 3 weeks. And during the day, she worked. She cleaned, organized, did whatever tasks Maeve or Winston assigned her. She kept her head down and her complaints to herself. But at night was different. Every night, around 10 p.m., she would go to Zach's room. She would sit in the armchair by his bed, and she would sing. It had started that first night on the balcony and continued without discussion. Zach never asked her to come. She never asked if she should. It just happened. And every night, without fail, she watched the tension melt from his face as her voice wrapped around him. She watched his breathing slow, his eyes flutter closed, his body finally surrender to sleep. For a man who hadn't slept properly in 14 years, he now slept like the dead. Because of her. Because of me, Novi thought as she walked toward his bedroom that evening. I do that for him. I give him peace. The thought made her heart flutter in ways she tried very hard not to examine. She knocked softly on his door. Come in. She pushed it open and found Zach sitting at his desk, laptop open in front of him. He was still in his work clothes, tailored gray pants, white button-down with the sleeves rolled up to reveal muscular forearms, and his dreads were pulled back from his face with a simple band. God, he's gorgeous, Novi thought for the 1,000th time. It's actually unfair how gorgeous he is. Early tonight, Zach said without looking up from his screen. I finished my work early. Maeve ran out of ways to torture me for the day. That got his attention. He glanced at her, one eyebrow raised. Ah, torture? Novi waved a hand dismissively. Nothing I can't handle. Zach studied her for a moment, those charcoal black eyes seeing more than she wanted them to, but he didn't press. Give me 10 minutes, he said, turning back to his laptop. I need to finish this email. Take your time. Novi settled into her usual armchair, tucking her legs beneath her. This had become her favorite spot in the entire mansion. This chair, in this room, watching Zach work while she waited to sing him to sleep. It was domestic. It was intimate. It was probably going to break her heart eventually, but she couldn't bring herself to care. She let her eyes wander around the room, cataloging details she'd memorized weeks ago. The minimal furniture, the expensive art, the complete absence of personal photographs. No pictures of family. No mementos from childhood. Nothing that suggested this room belonged to a real person with a history and connections. Just empty luxury. You're staring. Novi blinked. Zach had closed his laptop and was watching her with an unreadable expression. Sorry, I was just thinking. About? About how impersonal this room is. The words slipped out before she could stop them. There's nothing here that tells me who you are. No photos, no keepsakes, no anything. Zach's expression flickered. Surprise, maybe, or discomfort. I don't like clutter. It's not about clutter. It's about... Novi hesitated. Memory, connection. Things that remind you who you are when you forget. I never forget who I am. Lucky you. They stared at each other. The air between them felt charged, on heavy with something neither of them was willing to name. Then Zach looked away. I spoke to someone today, he said, and the abrupt topic change made Novi blink. About your singing. Her heart stuttered. What? I have a contact at Monarch Records, one of the biggest labels in Chicago. He stood and crossed to a small table, picking up a business card. His name is Darius Webb. He's a producer, one of the best in the industry. I told him about you. Novi's mouth fell open. You did? I told you I would. Zach held out the card. He wants to meet you, tomorrow, if you're available. Novi stared at the card like it might bite her. Darius Webb, senior producer, Monarch Records. This was real. This was actually happening. I don't know what to say. Say you'll go. Zach's voice was flat, but his eyes held something warmer. Say you'll show him what I heard that first night. Novi took the card with trembling fingers. Why are you doing this? She whispered. Really? Zach was quiet for a moment. Because your voice is extraordinary, he said finally. Because you have a gift that shouldn't be wasted cleaning bathrooms. And because... He stopped. Because... His jaw tightened. Because you helped me. This is repayment. Nothing more. Nothing more. The words stung more than they should have. But Novi forced a smile and tucked the card into her pocket. Thank you, she said softly. For everything. Zach nodded once, then turned toward the bed. Ready? Ready. And as Novi began to sing, she tried to ignore the ache in her chest, the growing certainty that she was falling for a man who might never be able to fall back. The next day, Novi arrived Monarch Records. Monarch Records occupied the top 3 floors of a gleaming glass tower in downtown Chicago. The lobby alone was bigger than Vernon's entire house, all white marble and modern art, and people in expensive clothes moving with purpose. Novi felt wildly out of place. She'd borrowed a dress from the mansion's collection of emergency guest attire, a simple navy blue sheath that Winston had assured her was appropriate for a business meeting. Her hair was pulled back in a sleek bun. Her makeup was minimal but polished. She looked professional. She felt like she was going to throw up. Miss Palmer? A young woman with a tablet and a brilliant smile approached her. I'm Jade, Mr. Webb's assistant. He's ready for you. Follow me. Novi followed Jade through a maze of corridors. I'd passed glass-walled recording studios and offices filled with gold records. Music thumped from behind closed doors, snippets of songs that might become the next big hits. This is where dreams come true, Novi thought. Or where they die. Jade stopped in front of a door labeled Studio A and knocked twice. Come in. The door opened onto a massive recording studio. Professional equipment everywhere, a grand piano in the corner, and floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the Chicago skyline. And standing in the center of it all was Darius Webb. Novi's first thought was that he looked nothing like she'd expected. He was young, maybe mid-30s, with warm brown skin and close-cropped hair faded perfectly at the sides. His beard was neat and precise, framing a face that was handsome in an approachable way. He wore dark jeans and a casual blazer over a Monarch Records t-shirt, and his smile was easy and genuine. His eyes were kind. That was what struck her most. In an industry full of sharks, his eyes were kind. Novi Palmer. He crossed the room and extended his hand. I've been looking forward to meeting you. His handshake was warm and firm. His voice was rich and smooth, the kind of voice that probably made artists feel instantly at ease. Thank you for seeing me, Mr. Webb. Darius, please. He gestured to a comfortable-looking couch. Sit. Can I get you anything? Water? Coffee? Something stronger? Water would be great. Jade appeared with a bottle of sparkling water before Novi even finished the sentence, then disappeared discreetly. Darius sat across from her, leaning back casually. So, Zach Brown called me personally to rave about your voice. Do you know how rare that is? Novi blinked. He raved? His exact words were transcendent and unlike anything I've ever heard. Darius grinned. And Zach isn't exactly known for his enthusiasm. I've known him for years. We went to college together, and I've never heard him talk about anyone like that, especially not a woman. Heat flooded Novi's cheeks. He's been very kind to me. Kind, Darius laughed. Zach Brown kind. That's a new one. He leaned forward. Look, I'll be honest with you. When Zach called, I assumed he was overselling. Famous people exaggerate, artists exaggerate, everyone exaggerates. But Zach doesn't. He's physically incapable of saying something he doesn't mean. Novi's heart was pounding. So, you want to hear me sing? I want to hear you perform. Darius stood and gestured toward the recording booth. Nothing formal, no pressure. Just sing something, anything. Let me hear what made Zach Brown use the word transcendent. Novi's legs felt like jelly as she walked toward the booth. This was it. This was her chance. Don't screw this up, don't screw this up, don't. She stepped into the booth. The headphones went over her ears. The microphone loomed in front of her face. And suddenly, everything went quiet. Darius's voice came through the headphones, warm and encouraging. Whenever you're ready, take your time. Novi closed her eyes. She thought about her mother, about sitting beside her bed in that tiny apartment, singing her to sleep while cancer slowly stole her away. She thought about Zach, about the balcony, and the moonlight, the way his face had softened when he finally let himself rest. She thought about all the years she'd dreamed of this moment and all the reasons she'd been told it would never come. And then she opened her mouth, and she sang. The song started soft, barely more than a whisper, but it built like a wave gathering strength before it crashes on the shore. I've been waiting for so long, for someone to see me, standing in the shadows, hoping to be free. Her voice rose, filling the studio with sound that seemed to come from somewhere beyond her body, rich and warm and aching with emotion.
But I found my voice in silence, found my strength in the dark, and I won't let anyone.
The notes poured out of her like water from a broken
tear
dam.
me apart.
Years of pain and hope and longing translated into pure, devastating sound. When the last note faded, Novi opened her eyes. Darius was standing at the glass, completely still. His expression was something between awe and disbelief. For a long, terrible moment, he said nothing. Then he spoke into the microphone. Where the hell have you been hiding? Y'all, did you hear how Darius reacted? This man is one of the biggest producers in Chicago, and he's looking at Novi like she just fell from heaven. If you think Novi's life is about to change forever, type Go A&F Shine Novi in the comments. And hit that like button because we're just getting started. 2 hours later, Novi walked out of Monarch Records with a contract in her purse and a development deal that made her head spin. This is really happening? She said for the 5th time. Darius laughed, walking beside her toward the elevator. It's really happening. 3 months of vocal coaching, professional training, then we start recording your debut EP. He shook his head. I still can't believe you've never had formal training. Your voice is transcendent? Novi offered with a small smile. Zach's word, not mine. But yeah, something like that. They stepped into the elevator. Darius pressed the button for the lobby, then turned to her. Can I be honest with you, Novi? Please. I didn't believe Zach when he called. I thought he was doing a favor for a friend, or trying to help out a charity case. Darius's warm eyes met hers. But you're not a charity case. You're the real thing. And if you work hard, if you trust me, I'm going to make you a star. Novi's throat tightened. I don't know how to thank you. Thank me by showing up, by working harder than you've ever worked, by being ready when your moment comes. The elevator doors opened, and Darius stepped out, turning to face her with that easy smile. And maybe thank Zach. He's the one who made this happen. Zach. Novi thought about him the entire drive back to the mansion. Zach, who had saved her from a forced marriage, who had paid $4 million to free her, who had given her a place to live and a chance at her dreams. Zach, who held her at arm's length but carried her to his bed when she fell asleep. Zach, who said her voice was transcendent and meant it because he was physically incapable of saying something he didn't mean. I need to thank him, she thought. Really thank him. Not just with words, something more. By the time the car pulled up to Zenith Estate, she had a plan. That evening, Zach came home at 7 p.m., same as always. Novi was waiting in the foyer. She'd changed into a nicer dress, emerald green, fitted at the waist, borrowed from the guest collection, and actually put effort into her hair and makeup. She looked good. She felt nervous as hell. "You're home," she said, then immediately wanted to kick herself. Obviously, he's home. He's standing right there. Brilliant observation, Novi. Zach paused in the doorway, his black eyes sweeping over her appearance. Something flickered in his expression. Surprise? Interest? But it disappeared before she could name it. "You look nice." The words were flat, casual, like he was commenting on the weather. But coming from Zach, they might as well have been a love sonnet. "Thank you." Novi clasped her hands in front of her to keep them from trembling. "I wanted to tell you about my meeting, and to thank you. Properly." "The meeting went well, then?" "It went—" She laughed, slightly hysterical. "Darius Webb signed me to a development deal. 3 months of training, then I start recording my debut EP. It's everything I ever wanted." For a moment, just a moment, something warm flickered in Zach's charcoal eyes. "Good," he said. "You deserve it." "Because of you." Novi stepped closer. "I wouldn't have any of this without you. The freedom, the opportunity, the chance to even try." She took a breath. "I want to do something for you. To thank you." Zach's expression shuddered. "That's not necessary. Please, let me make dinner. A real dinner. Something special. Just the two of us." "I have work." "Zach." She reached out and touched his arm. He froze. It was the first time she'd voluntarily touched him since that day in the wedding hall, when she'd held his hand to convince Desmond they were together. His muscle tensed beneath her fingers, but he didn't pull away. "Please," she said softly. "Let me do this." For a long moment, he didn't respond. His black eyes searched her face like he was looking for something. A trap, maybe, or a hidden agenda. But all he found was sincerity. "Fine," he said finally. "So one dinner." Novi's face lit up. "Thank you. I'll have it ready by 8. She practically skipped toward the kitchen, her heart soaring. She didn't see the way Zach watched her go. His expression conflicted, confused, like a man standing at the edge of a cliff, unsure whether to step back or fall. The kitchen at Zenith Estate was Maeve's domain. She ruled it like a queen, or a tyrant, depending on who you asked. Every pot, every pan, every spatula had its place, and God help anyone who moved something without permission. Novi had avoided the kitchen as much as possible over the past 3 weeks. But tonight, she had no choice. She pushed through the swinging doors, mentally preparing for battle. Maeve was at the center island, chopping vegetables with the kind of precision that suggested she was imagining each carrot as someone's neck. She looked up when Novi entered, and her expression immediately soured. "What do you want?" "I need to use the kitchen," Novi said pleasantly. "I'm making dinner for Mr. Brown." Maeve's knife stopped mid-chop. "You're making dinner for Mr. Brown?" "Yes. In my kitchen. It's the only kitchen in the house." Maeve's eyes narrowed to slits. "And what exactly are you planning to make?" Novi listed the menu she'd planned, a simple but elegant meal she'd learned to cook from her mother. Nothing fancy, but everything made with care. Maeve listened with the expression of someone watching a cockroach try to compose a symphony. "Fine," she said finally, her voice dripping with false sweetness. I get out of your way then." She set down her knife, wiped her hands on her apron, and walked out of the kitchen. The doors swung shut behind her. That was too easy, Novi thought. But she pushed the worry aside and got to work. 1 hour later, something was wrong. Novi stared at the pot on the stove, where her carefully prepared sauce had transformed into something that looked and smelled like toxic waste. "What the—" She grabbed the spice containers she'd used, checking the labels. Salt, pepper, oregano, garlic powder. Everything looked right. So why did her sauce taste like burnt rubber mixed with regret? She opened the oregano container and sniffed. Her eyes watered. That wasn't oregano. That was something else entirely. Something Maeve had clearly switched while Novi wasn't looking. That evil, conniving, "Are petty? Having trouble?" Novi whirled around. Zach stood in the kitchen doorway, still in his work clothes, one eyebrow raised. "No, everything's fine, I just—" She glanced at the ruined sauce, then back at him. Her shoulders slumped. "Everything is not fine. I think Maeve sabotaged me." Sabotaged? She switched the spices. "My sauce is—" She gestured helplessly at the pot. "Inedible. Possibly toxic." To her surprise, something that looked almost like amusement flickered across Zach's face. "Show me." He crossed to the stove and peered into the pot. Then he picked up the oregano container and sniffed it. His lips twitched. "This is fish sauce," he said. "Fish sauce? Mixed with, I think, cumin and possibly coffee grounds." Novi wanted to scream. "I'm going to kill her. And I'm going to actually murder her." That seems extreme. She's been doing this for 3 weeks, switching my cleaning supplies, sending me to rooms that don't exist, feeding me soup that was basically liquid fire. Novi threw her hands up. "I just wanted to make you one nice dinner, and she turned it into a biological weapon." Zach studied her face, her flushed cheeks, her frustrated eyes, her disheveled hair that had been perfect an hour ago. And then he did something unexpected. He laughed. It was a small sound, more of an exhale than a full laugh, but it transformed his face. The hardness softened. The shadows under his eyes seemed lighter. For one brief moment, he looked almost human. "What?" Novi demanded. "What's funny?" "You." He shook his head slightly. "You're covered in what I hope is flour. Your sauce could probably dissolve metal, and you're talking about murder. It's what?" He seemed to catch himself, the amusement fading. "Nothing. Let me help." "Help?" "I know my way around a kitchen." He was already rolling up his sleeves. "We can salvage this." Novi stared at him. "You cook?" "I survive." He moved past her to assess the damage. "When I was in college, before I could afford staff, I learned the basics. It's been a while, but..." He started pulling ingredients from the refrigerator. "We'll figure it out." And so, somehow, improbably, Novi found herself cooking dinner side by side with Zachary Brown. The dinner. They worked together for an hour. Zach was efficient in the kitchen, precise and methodical, just like everything else he did. He didn't waste movements, didn't second-guess himself. I didn't hesitate. But he also helped. When Novi struggled to reach a pot on a high shelf, he got it down for her. When she couldn't open a jar, he took it without comment and handed it back unsealed. When she accidentally splashed sauce on her dress, he silently handed her a towel. It was domestic. It was intimate. It was the closest Novi had felt to another human being in years. "You're smiling," Zach said at one point. Novi blinked. "Am I?" "Yes, why?" "I don't know, I just..." She shrugged, feeling suddenly shy. "This is nice. Cooking together. It feels normal." Zach was quiet for a moment. "I don't do normal," he said finally. "I know. That's what makes this special." Their eyes met across the kitchen island. Something passed between them. A spark, a current, a question neither of them was brave enough to ask. And then Zach looked away. "The pasta's ready," he said. "Let's eat." They ate in the small breakfast nook instead of the formal dining room. Novi's choice, Zach's reluctant agreement. The meal wasn't fancy, but it was good. Better than good. "This isn't terrible," Zach said, which from him was practically a standing ovation. "High praise from the man who called my voice transcendent." "I didn't call it..." He stopped, then sighed. "Darius told you." "He said you've never talked about anyone like that, especially not a woman." Zach's jaw tightened, but he didn't deny it. "I don't understand you," Novi said softly. "What's to understand?" "Everything. You say you don't form attachments, but you saved me. You say you don't care, but you paid $4 million to free a stranger. You say you don't date, but you..." She trailed off. But I what? But you carried me to your bed. But you let me sing you to sleep every night. But you look at me sometimes like you're trying to figure out a puzzle you've never seen before. Never mind, she said instead. Forget I said anything. They ate in silence for a few minutes. Then Zach spoke. My mother left me at my father's funeral. Novi looked up, startled. I was 16. My father had a heart attack, sudden, no warning, and he was gone. At the funeral, I didn't cry. I couldn't. Everyone else was sobbing, falling apart, and I just stood there, processing. He stared at his plate, but Novi could tell he wasn't seeing it. My mother looked at me and said, "What's wrong with you? Why aren't you crying? Don't you feel anything?" And I told her I did feel things. I just felt them, differently, internally. That I needed time to process before I could express them. He paused. She said she couldn't be around someone who was broken like that. That looking at me was like looking at a robot wearing her husband's face. And then she left, got in her car and drove away. I never saw her again. Novi's heart shattered. Zach, I'm telling you this because you asked. His black eyes finally met hers. I'm not good at emotions. I never have been. I process things differently than most people. Some would call it autism. Others would call it being cold or detached. I just call it being me. There's nothing wrong with how you process emotions. Try telling that to everyone who's ever left. I'm not leaving. The words hung in the air between them. Zach stared at her. His expression was unreadable, but his eyes, those charcoal black eyes, held something that looked almost like hope. You don't know that, he said quietly. No, Novi agreed. But I know this. You're not broken. You're not a robot. You're just different. And different isn't bad. She reached across the table and placed her hand over his. He flinched, that same instinctive pullback she'd come to expect. But he didn't withdraw. Thank you, he said, so quietly she almost didn't hear it. For listening. Thank you for telling me. They sat there, hands touching, the weight of the moment pressing down on them. And for the first time since she'd crashed into his life, Novi felt like she was seeing the real Zach. Not the billionaire, not the CEO, not the man who held the world at arm's length. Just Zach, broken and trying, lonely and afraid, just like her. 3 weeks later. The glow-up began. Darius Webb was a man of his word. The training he'd promised was intense. Vocal exercises at dawn, dance lessons in the afternoon, media coaching in the evening. Novi fell into bed each night, exhausted but exhilarated, muscles aching, voice raw, heart full. She was becoming someone new, someone powerful, someone who looked in the mirror and saw a star staring back. The physical transformation was dramatic. She'd always been pretty, but now she was striking. The stylists Darius hired had worked magic, teaching her how to dress for her body, how to do makeup that enhanced rather than masked, how to carry herself like she belonged in every room. Her hair was now a crown of defined curls that framed her face. Her skin glowed from facials and proper skincare. Her wardrobe had evolved from borrowed guest clothes to designer pieces that made her feel like a queen. And people noticed. Winston, the butler, nearly dropped a tray the first time he saw her new look. Elliot, Zach's assistant, actually stammered. Even the male staff members who had barely acknowledged her existence now found reasons to linger when she walked by. But the person whose reaction mattered most was harder to read. One evening, Novi came home from training to find Zach in the living room, reading financial reports. "Hey," she said, tossing her bag on a chair. "Long day?" He looked up and froze. She was wearing workout clothes, designer workout clothes, but still. Leggings that hugged every curve. A fitted tank top that showed off arms that were becoming more toned by the day. Her hair was piled on top of her head in a messy bun, and her skin was still glowing from exertion. She looked effortlessly beautiful. Zach stared at her for approximately 3 seconds too long. Then he looked back at his reports. "You're home early?" he said, his voice slightly rougher than usual. Darius ended training early. Something about a label meeting. Novi flopped onto the couch across from him. I think he's planning something. He keeps being mysterious. Mysterious how? He keeps asking about my origin story. How I ended up at Monarch Records. Who helped me get there? She stretched, arms above her head, and didn't notice how Zach's eyes tracked the movement. I think he wants to do some kind of promotional thing. Your origin story. Zach's voice was carefully neutral. Which includes me. Which includes you. Novi sat up, suddenly concerned. Would that be a problem? If people knew you helped me? People already know. I made calls, called in favors. Half the industry knows Zachary Brown sponsored an unknown singer from nowhere. Does that bother you? Zach was quiet for a moment. No, he said finally. It doesn't bother me. But he didn't elaborate, and Novi didn't push. She'd learned that about him over the past weeks. He said what he meant, and nothing more. If he wanted to explain, he would. If he didn't, pressing only made him retreat further. I'm going to shower, she said, standing. Same time tonight? Same time. She headed toward the stairs, then paused. Zach? He looked up. You know you can come watch me train sometime, right? If you wanted to see what all this money you've invested is producing? Something flickered in his eyes. I'll consider it. Consider it strongly. I'm actually getting pretty good. She tossed a smile over her shoulder and continued up the stairs. She didn't see the way Zach's eyes followed her until she disappeared from view. She didn't see him close his financial reports and sit in silence for a long time. She didn't see him pull up his calendar and block out time for personal appointment, Monarch Records. But Maeve saw. Maeve saw everything. Maeve had been quiet lately. Too quiet. Ever since the fish sauce incident, she'd retreated to her kitchen and stopped actively tormenting Novi. But Novi wasn't fooled. She knew the silence was just the calm before another storm. She was right. It started innocently enough. Novi came down to breakfast to find a beautiful plate of food waiting for her. Eggs Benedict, fresh fruit, artisanal toast. From Maeve, Winston said with an approving smile. She said she wanted to apologize for your rocky start. Novi stared at the plate suspiciously. Apologize. Her words, not mine. Perhaps she's turned over a new leaf? Turned over a new leaf, my ass, Novi thought. But she was starving after yesterday's training, and the food looked amazing, and maybe, Maeve had actually decided to be civil. She took a bite of the eggs Benedict. It was delicious. Perfect, even. Huh? Novi thought, surprised. Maybe she really did. And then her lips started tingling. Not in a good way. In a something is very wrong way. Novi touched her mouth. Her lips felt bigger. Winston, is there any chance? Miss Palmer, are you all right? Your face is... She didn't hear the rest because she was already sprinting to the nearest mirror. Her reflection stared back at her with lips swollen to twice their normal size. Maeve! Zach found her 10 minutes later, sitting in the kitchen with an ice pack pressed to her face while Winston fluttered around anxiously. What happened? Maeve happened. Novi's words came out garbled through her swollen lips. She put something in my food, something I'm allergic to. You have food allergies? To kiwi, which she knows because I told her the first week I was here. Novi glared at the ice pack like it had personally offended her. Zach's expression went very, very still. Where is she? I don't know, probably hiding. Winston. The butler straightened. Sir? Find Maeve. Bring her here. There was something in Zach's voice, something cold and dangerous, that made Winston move faster than Novi had ever seen him move. Maeve appeared 5 minutes later, her expression a mask of innocence. You wanted to see me, Mr. Brown? Did you put kiwi in Miss Palmer's breakfast? What? No, I would never. Don't lie to me. The words cut through Maeve's protests like a knife. She flinched. It was just supposed to be a harmless... I didn't think... You put a known allergen in her food. You could have sent her to the hospital. This stops now. Maeve's face crumpled. Mr. Brown, please, I've worked for you for 8 years. And in those 8 years, you've never once acted like this. What changed? Maeve's eyes flicked to Novi, and suddenly the truth was painfully obvious to everyone in the room. I see. Zach's voice was ice. You're jealous you're not the only female here anymore. I'm not. You are. You've been sabotaging Novi because you see her as competition. For what exactly, I don't want to know. Maeve's face went red, then white, then red again. Mr. Brown, you have 2 options. Zach's charcoal eyes were cold. Apologize to Miss Palmer, genuinely, and stop this behavior immediately, or find another position elsewhere. The silence stretched like a rubber band about to snap. Maeve looked at Novi. Her eyes were wet, her expression a mixture of humiliation and defeat. I'm sorry, she said, the words clearly costing her. It won't happen again. Novi nodded slowly. Okay. Maeve fled the kitchen without another word. Zach turned to Novi, his expression softening slightly when he saw her still swollen face. Are you all right? I'll live. The swelling should go down in a few hours. Do you need a doctor? No, it looks worse than it is. Novi managed a garbled smile. Thank you for defending me. She was out of line. She's in love with you. The words hung in the air. Zach's expression didn't change. I'm aware. And you let her stay anyway? She's an excellent chef. Her feelings are her own business as long as they don't interfere with her work. He paused. Today, they interfered. You're not going to fire her? No, unless you want me to. Novi considered it. Part of her, the petty part, wanted Maeve gone. But another part understood something about unrequited love, about wanting someone who would never want you back. Let her stay, Novi said. I think she got the message. Zach nodded once. I'll have Winston bring you something safe to eat. He turned to leave. Zach? He paused. She's going to keep being jealous, Novi said. As long as I'm here, as long as I'm around you, she's going to think there's something going on. Is there? The question caught her off guard. Is there what? Something going on. Zach's black eyes met hers. Between us. Novi's heart pounded. Her swollen lips throbbed. Her brain screamed at her to say something clever, something smooth, something that didn't make her sound like a desperate fool. I don't know, she said honestly. Is there? Zach was quiet for a long moment. I don't know either, he said finally. But I'm starting to think there might be. And then he walked out, leaving Novi sitting in the kitchen with an ice pack on her face and a heart that was doing backflips. Did you hear what Zach just said? I'm starting to think there might be. This man who doesn't do relationships, who doesn't form attachments, who has pushed everyone away for 14 years, he's starting to feel something. If you're screaming at your screen right now, comment, "They're falling in love," and hit that subscribe button because we're about to meet someone who's going to make things very complicated. 1 week later, Uncle Desmond's visited Novi was in the middle of vocal exercises when Winston appeared in the doorway of the music room. Miss Palmer, I apologize for the interruption, but we have an unexpected visitor. Visitor? Mr. Desmond Brown, Mr. Zach's uncle. He's asking to see both of you. Novi's blood ran cold. Desmond. The man she'd almost been forced to marry. The man she hadn't seen since that disastrous day in the wedding hall. He was here. Where's Zach? On his way home. He asked me to tell you to... Winston cleared his throat. To play along. Whatever that means. Play along. Oh, God. Novi found Desmond in the formal living room, looking perfectly at ease in one of the antique chairs. He stood when she entered, his silver hair gleaming, his gray eyes sharp with interest. Novi. His smile was warm, surprisingly warm. Look at you. You've positively blossomed. Mr. Brown. She forced herself to smile back. This is unexpected. I was in the neighborhood and thought I'd check on my nephew and his companion. His eyes twinkled. The two of you have been quite the subject of family gossip, you know. Zachary Brown, living with a woman, actually showing interest in another human being. It's unprecedented. We're not, it's complicated. Isn't it always? Desmond gestured for her to sit. Please. I come in peace, I promise. I'm not here to cause trouble. Novi sat, keeping careful distance between them. I have to admit, Desmond continued, when Zach stopped my wedding, I was furious. Elizabeth, my late wife, she would have been horrified at how I handled that whole situation. Trying to buy a bride. He shook his head. Grief makes us do strange things. I'm sorry about your wife. Thank you. She was everything. His expression softened. When I lost her, I lost myself. I thought remarrying would fill the void. Instead, it just made me realize how much I missed her. For a moment, Novi glimpsed the man beneath the wealthy exterior. Lonely, grieving, still in love with a ghost. Anyway, Desmond straightened. I didn't come here to be melancholy. I came to see how you two lovebirds are doing. Before Novi could correct him, the door opened. Zach walked in. His eyes found Novi immediately, then moved to his uncle. His expression was carefully neutral. Uncle Desmond, you should have called. And miss the look on your face right now? Never. Desmond stood and crossed to embrace his nephew. You look well, rested. Have you been sleeping better? Zach's eyes flicked to Novi. Yes. And Novi, she's treating you well? She's adequate. Adequate, Desmond laughed. From you, like that's practically a declaration of love. He looked between them with obvious delight. Well, don't let me interrupt your domestic bliss. I just wanted to see it with my own eyes. Well, since I'm here, why don't we have dinner? The three of us. I'd love to hear more about how my nephew ended up with a woman living under his roof. Oh no. Novi saw the trap closing, and there was nothing she could do to stop it. Dinner was a minefield. Desmond asked questions with the skill of a trained interrogator, weaving casual conversation with pointed inquiries. How did you two really meet? What do you do all day? Do you spend much time together? Zach answered in monotones. Novi tried to follow his lead, but they weren't convincing. You know, Desmond said, setting down his wine glass, when you claimed Novi as yours in that hotel room, I believed you. You seemed so protective, passionate even by your standards. I explained that already. You explained that you had history, that you'd lost touch, that seeing her about to marry me sparked something. Desmond's gray eyes were sharp. But watching you two tonight, I don't see spark. I see avoidance. Novi's heart pounded. We're private people, she said quickly. We don't do public displays. So I've heard. But surely, at home, behind closed doors? Desmond smiled. Surely there's some affection? Zach's jaw tightened. Desmond leaned back in his chair. Here's the thing. I want to believe my nephew has finally found someone. But I'm not seeing evidence. And if this is all a ruse, if you lied to me that day, I need to know. Why? Zach's voice was cold. What difference does it make now? I repaid the debt, didn't I? Because I gave up a bride for you. Because I trusted that what you said was true. Because if it wasn't, Desmond's expression hardened slightly. Then we need to have a very different conversation for deceit. The threat hung in the air. Novi's mind raced. If Desmond discovered the truth, that she and Zach had never actually been together, that the history was a lie, what would happen? Would he try to enforce the original marriage contract? Would he demand his money back from Vernon? She couldn't let that happen. Before she could think twice, she stood, crossed to where Zach was sitting, and draped herself over his shoulder. He went completely rigid. Baby, she said, her voice sweet as honey, your uncle is worried about us. Maybe we should show him there's nothing to worry about. Zach's eyes snapped to hers. They were wide with alarm, and something else. Something that looked almost like fear. But he didn't push her away. See, Uncle Desmond? Novi leaned her cheek against Zach's hair, her arm wrapped around his shoulders. We're just private. That doesn't mean we're not together. She felt Zach's hand come up, slowly, hesitantly, and rest on her arm. The touch was light, uncertain, but it was there. We're fine, Zach said, his voice rougher than usual. There's nothing to worry about. Desmond watched them for a long moment. Then his face broke into a genuine smile. Well, well, he murmured. Perhaps I was worried for nothing. He raised his wineglass. To the happy couple, then. May you continue to grow closer. Novi raised her glass with her free hand. Zach didn't move, but he also didn't let go of her arm. Desmond left after dinner, satisfied, or at least pretending to be. Novi collapsed onto the living room couch the moment his car pulled away. That was terrifying, she breathed. I thought for sure he was going to catch us. Zach stood by the window, his back to her. He hadn't said a word since Desmond left. Zach, you didn't have to do that. Do what? Touch me. Pretend to be... He paused. Affectionate. He was getting suspicious. I know. He finally turned to face her, and his expression was conflicted. But you should know. When you touched me like that... Novi's heart skipped. What? I didn't hate it. The words hung between them. You didn't hate it, Novi repeated slowly. Adi, no. His charcoal eyes met hers. I usually hate being touched. But with you, I didn't. Novi stood, her legs slightly unsteady. What does that mean? I don't know. Zach's voice was barely above a whisper. But I think I want to find out. The air between them crackled with electricity. Novi took a step toward him. He didn't step back. Zach? His phone buzzed, shattering the moment. He glanced at the screen, and his expression shifted. It's Darius, he said. He wants you at the studio tomorrow. Something about a showcase. The spell was broken. Novi took a breath, trying to calm her racing heart. A showcase? That's what he says. He wants you to perform for some industry executives. Zach's voice had returned to its usual flatness, but his eyes still held that new warmth. Like this could be your big break. I know. You should rest. Tomorrow is important. I know. Neither of them moved. Good night, Novi. Good night, Zach. She walked toward the stairs, feeling his eyes on her the whole way. And as she climbed to her room, one thought played on repeat in her mind. I didn't hate it. He didn't hate it when I touched him. That means something. That has to mean something. The showcase. The next day had her feeling all sorts of jitters. Monarch Records had transformed Studio A into a performance space. Rows of chairs faced a small stage. Executive-looking people in expensive clothes filled the seats, clutching tablets and looking important. In the front row sat Darius, flanked by several people Novi didn't recognize. And in the very back, trying to be inconspicuous and failing spectacularly with how everyone kept glancing back to him, was Zach. He'd come. He'd actually come. Novi's heart soared as she stepped onto the stage. Ladies and gentlemen, Darius's voice rang out. Thank you for being here. What you're about to witness is something special. A voice that comes along once in a generation. I present to you, Novi Palmer. The lights dimmed. The music started. And Novi did what she was born to do. She sang. The performance was transcendent. Every note was perfect. Every emotion was raw and real. Novi poured 3 months of training, a lifetime of dreaming, and every ounce of feeling she had into that song. When the final note faded, there was silence. Then applause. Thunderous standing ovation applause. Novi blinked back tears as the executives rose to their feet, as Darius beamed with pride, as Zach watched her from the back of the room with an expression she'd never seen before. Pride, wonder, and something else. Something that looked a lot like love. After the showcase, Darius was practically glowing as he led Novi through the crowd of executives, all of whom wanted to shake her hand, give her their cards, tell her how amazing she was. You were incredible, Thank you for believing in me, Novi said, overwhelmed. Believing in you was the easy part. You did all the work. Darius guided her toward a quiet corner. Listen, there's someone I want you to meet. He's been watching you for a while now, since I first started posting your training videos on our internal channels. And he's very interested in working with you. Who? His name is Khalil Monroe. He's one of our top A&R executives. Works directly with our biggest artists. If he takes you under his wing... Darius grinned. Let's just say your career is about to go into overdrive. Before Novi could respond, a man appeared at Darius's side, and Novi's breath caught. Khalil Monroe was stunning. Tall, almost as tall as Zach, with caramel skin that seemed to glow under the studio lights. His hair was cropped close to his head, perfectly lined up. His beard was neat and precise, framing a face that belonged on magazine covers. He wore a tailored suit, and when he smiled, it was like the sun coming out. Novi Palmer. His voice was smooth as butter. Finally, we meet. He extended his hand, and when Novi took it, he held on a beat too long. I've been following your progress, Khalil continued. Every video Darius posted, every rehearsal recording, and tonight, he shook his head slowly. Tonight confirmed everything I suspected, which is that you're going to be a star. His dark eyes held hers, and I want to be the one who makes it happen. From across the room, Novi felt eyes on her. She glanced over Khalil's shoulder. Zach was watching them. His expression was carefully neutral, but his jaw was tight. His hands were clenched at his sides, and his eyes were fixed on where Khalil held her hand. Is he jealous? The thought was thrilling and terrifying. This was about to get very, very complicated. Novi just gave the performance of a lifetime. Zach might finally be catching feelings, and now there's a new man in the picture. The gorgeous, successful, a very interested Khalil Monroe. What's Zach going to do? Is he going to step up, or is he going to let Khalil sweep Novi off her feet? Comment Team Zach or Team Khalil below and let me know who you're rooting for. And subscribe right now because the final part is coming. Khalil Monroe was everywhere. In the 3 weeks since the showcase, he had become a constant presence in Novi's life. At rehearsals, at meetings, at recording sessions. He brought her coffee in the mornings, ordered her favorite lunch without being asked, and somehow always managed to be standing exactly where she needed him. He was charming. He was attentive. He was clearly, unmistakably interested in more than her voice. And Novi had no idea what to do about it. You're distracted. Novi blinked, snapping back to the present. She was in the recording booth at Monarch Records, headphones around her neck, and Darius was watching her through the glass with raised eyebrows. Sorry, she said into the microphone. Can we take 5? Take 10. You need it. Novi pulled off the headphones and slumped against the booth wall. Through the window, she could see Khalil entering the control room, 2 cups of coffee in his hands, that devastating smile on his face. He's perfect, she thought. On paper, he's absolutely perfect. Successful, gorgeous, kind, interested. So why couldn't she stop thinking about someone else? Someone with charcoal black eyes and shadows underneath them. Someone who held the world at arm's length but carried her to his bed when she fell asleep. Someone who said, I didn't hate it, like it was a declaration of love. Like Zach. She hadn't seen him much lately. Ever since the showcase, ever since Khalil had appeared, Zach had retreated. He was working longer hours, coming home later, finding reasons to be elsewhere whenever she was around. He was pulling away, and it was breaking her heart. One evening, Novi came home to find the mansion quiet. Too quiet. Winston, she called, setting her bag on the foyer table. Is Zach home? The butler appeared from the direction of the kitchen, his expression carefully neutral. Mr. Brown is in his study, Miss Palmer. He asked not to be disturbed. Of course he did. Did he eat dinner? He declined. Did he eat anything today? Winston's hesitation was answer enough. Novi sighed. I'll handle it. She marched toward the kitchen, ignoring Winston's protests. Zach could hide from her all he wanted, but she wasn't going to let him starve himself in the process. The kitchen was empty when she entered. Maeve had clearly gone home for the weekend, and Novi set about making something simple. A sandwich, some fruit. Nothing fancy, but enough to keep a grown man from wasting away. She was slicing bread when she heard footsteps behind her. She didn't need to turn around to know who it was. "What are you doing?" "Sandwich for you?" "For me." "Nice, but no thanks. I just came for water." She finished assembling the sandwich, placed it on a plate with the fruit, and finally turned to face him. Zach stood in the kitchen doorway, still in his work clothes. Charcoal suit, white shirt, loosened tie. His dreads were pulled back from his face, revealing the sharp angles of his cheekbones, the tired shadows under his eyes. He looked exhausted. He looked beautiful. God, I'm so far gone for this man. "You need to eat," she said, holding out the plate. "I'm not hungry." "I don't care." She crossed the kitchen and pressed the plate into his hands. "Eat." For a moment, she thought he would refuse. His jaw tightened. His eyes flashed with something that might have been annoyance, or something else entirely. Then he took the plate. Fine. He sat at the kitchen island, and Novi sat across from him, watching him eat in silence. The kitchen was dim, lit only by the light above the stove, and in the soft glow, Zach looked almost vulnerable. "You've been avoiding me," Novi said quietly. Zach's chewing slowed. "I've been working." "You've been hiding." "I don't hide." "Then why haven't I seen you in 3 days? Why are you coming home after I'm asleep and leaving before I wake up? Why?" "Because I don't know how to be around you anymore." The words stopped her cold. "What?" Zach set down the sandwich. His charcoal eyes met hers, and for once, they weren't guarded. They were raw, open, and almost afraid. "Before, it was simple," he said slowly, like each word cost him something. "You were a woman I helped. You worked here. You sang me to sleep. It was transactional, clean. And now? Now it's not clean." He ran a hand through his dreads, frustration evident in every line of his body. "Now I think about you when you're not here. I notice when you're gone. I see you with—" He stopped. "With Khalil?" Novi's heart was pounding. "Is that what this is about?" Zach's jaw clenched. "I saw how he looked at you at the showcase. I saw how he touched your arm, how he smiled at you. Zach, I'm not good at this." His voice was rough, almost angry, but the anger wasn't directed at her. It was directed at himself. "I don't know how to feel things the way normal people do. I don't know how to express emotions. I don't know how to—" "How to what?" He looked at her, and for a moment, his walls came completely down. "How to tell you that I can't stand the thought of another man making you smile." Novi's breath caught. "I know I have no right to feel this way," Zach continued, the words tumbling out like a dam had broken. "I told you I don't date. I told you I don't form attachments. And I meant it. I did. But then you crashed into my bathroom in a wedding dress and screamed at security guards and sang me to sleep, and suddenly I don't know what I feel anymore." He stood abruptly, pacing the kitchen like a caged animal. "Khalil is perfect for you. He's charming. He's successful. He knows how to be around people. He doesn't have—" He gestured vaguely at himself. "Whatever this is. Whatever's wrong with me. Nothing is wrong with you. Something is wrong with me." His voice cracked. "Something has always been wrong with me. My mother saw it. Everyone who's ever left saw it. I push people away because I don't know how to keep them close. And I'm pushing you away now because—" "Because?" He stopped pacing, turned to face her. His eyes were bright with something that looked almost like tears. "Because if I let myself have you, and then I lose you, I don't think I'll survive it." Novi stood. She crossed the kitchen slowly, giving him time to retreat, to pull away, to do what he always did. But he didn't move. She stopped right in front of him, close enough to touch, close enough to see the rapid pulse in his throat. "Zach," she said softly, Can I tell you something? He didn't respond, but his eyes never left hers. I don't want Khalil. His breath caught. I don't want charming or easy or perfect. She reached up and placed her hand on his chest, right over his heart. She felt it pounding beneath her palm, wild, desperate, alive. I want complicated. I want difficult. I want a man who doesn't know how to express emotions but carries me to his bed when I fall asleep. I want a man who says I didn't hate it like it's a love confession. I want Novi. I want you, Zach. I've wanted you since the moment you yelled at my dad to let go of me. Maybe even before that. Maybe since you stood before me and the guards. Maybe... She didn't get to finish, because Zach kissed her. It wasn't a gentle kiss. It was desperate, hungry, 14 years of loneliness and longing poured into a single moment. Novi kissed him back with everything she had, her hands fisted in his shirt, pulling him closer. When they finally broke apart, both gasping for air, Zach pressed his forehead against hers. I don't know how to do this, he whispered. Neither do I. I'm going to make mistakes. So am I. I might pull away. I might shut down. I might... Novi pulled back just enough to meet his eyes. Zach, I'm not your mother. I'm not going to leave because you process things differently. I'm not going to run because you're not perfect. You don't know that. Yes, I do. She smiled, and it felt like the sun coming out after a storm. Because I've been here for 2 months already. I've seen you at your worst. I've seen you cold and distant and prickly, and I'm still here. Why? Because underneath all that armor, I see someone good, someone kind, someone worth fighting for. Zach stared at her like she'd just spoken in a language he'd never heard before. No one's ever said that to me before, he said quietly. Not even my parents. Then they were fools. Novi reached up and touched his face, her fingers tracing the sharp line of his jaw. You're worth fighting for, Zach Brown, and I plan to keep fighting until you believe it. For a long moment, he didn't speak. Then, slowly, the corners of his lips curved upward. It wasn't quite a smile. Zach didn't do smiles, but it was close. It was as close as she'd ever seen. Okay, he said. Okay? Okay, I'll try. He took her hand, intertwining their fingers. I can't promise I'll be good at this, but I'll try. Novi's heart soared. That's all I'm asking. Y'all. Like they finally got together. If you're squealing right now, comment finally below and hit that like button because the drama is not over yet. There's still someone in Novi's life that needs to be flushed out. Being with Zach was nothing like Novi had expected. He wasn't romantic in the traditional sense. He didn't bring her flowers or write her poetry or whisper sweet nothings in her ear. But he showed up. Every single day, in 100 small ways, he showed up. He rearranged his schedule to have breakfast with her before she left for the studio. He sent her texts during the day, short, practical messages that somehow always made her smile. Don't forget to eat. Darius said your session ended early. I'm making dinner. Asterisk. He touched her now, too. Small touches, his hand on her lower back when they walked together, his fingers brushing her hair from her face, his arm around her shoulders while they watched movies she'd insisted on introducing him to. Each touch still seemed to require conscious effort. She could see him reminding himself that it was okay, that he was allowed, that she wanted him close. But he kept trying, and that meant everything. You're glowing, Maeve said one morning, her voice carefully neutral. Novi looked up from her breakfast, surprised. Maeve had barely spoken to her since the Kiwi incident, limiting their interactions to terse nods and professional necessity. Thank you? Maeve studied her for a long moment. Her expression was hard to read, a mixture of resignation and something that looked almost like acceptance. He's different with you, she said finally. I've worked for Mr. Brown for 8 years. I've never seen him like this. Novi didn't know what to say. I was wrong to sabotage you. The words seemed to cost Maeve something. I told myself I was protecting him, that you were just another person who would eventually leave and break what little was left of his heart. But I was protecting myself too, from having to accept that he was never going to look at me the way he looks at you. Maeve, don't. She held up a hand. I don't need sympathy. I made my peace with it. She turned back toward the stove, her movements brisk and efficient. Just don't hurt him. He's been hurt enough. Novi watched Maeve's rigid back, seeing the woman clearly for the first time. Not a villain. Not an enemy. Just a lonely woman who had loved someone she couldn't have. I won't, Novi said softly. Yet I promise. Maeve nodded once without turning around. It wasn't friendship. It wasn't even forgiveness. But it was a start. At Monarch Records, Khalil Monroe was many things, but he wasn't a fool. You and Zach Brown, he said one afternoon, catching Novi between sessions. It's real now, isn't it? Novi hesitated. How did you know? You stopped laughing at my jokes. He grinned, but there was a sadness behind it. And you check your phone every 5 minutes like you're waiting for something important. The only person who makes someone smile like that is someone they're falling for. I'm sorry. I should have told you earlier. I didn't mean to. Lead me on? Khalil shook his head. You didn't. You were always honest about where your heart was. I just hoped I could change it. You're a good man. Khalil. I know. His grin widened, more genuine now. And someday, I'll find a woman who looks at me the way you look at Zach Brown. Until then, I'll focus on making you a star. You're not upset? I'm disappointed. There's a difference. He extended his hand. Friends? Novi took it with a relieved smile. Friends. 3 months later, Novi's debut single dropped on a Friday. By Saturday, it was trending. By Sunday, it was everywhere. Radio stations, streaming playlists, viral videos of people singing along. Her voice, the voice that had once only sung her mother to sleep, was now reaching millions. And Novi Palmer, the woman who had once been sold into marriage for a debt she didn't owe, was becoming a star. This is insane, she breathed, scrolling through her phone at the breakfast table. Insane. Completely insane. Zach sat across from her, sipping coffee, expression as neutral as always. But his eyes, his charcoal black eyes, sparkled with something that looked like pride. You deserve it, he said simply. I couldn't have done it without you. You would have found a way. You're too stubborn not to. Novi laughed. Was that a compliment? It was a fact. It sounded like a compliment. Take it however you want. She stuck her tongue out at him, and the corner of his mouth twitched in that almost smile that she'd come to love. This is my life now, she thought. Breakfast with a man who shows love through facts and almost smiles. A career that's finally taking off. A future that actually looks bright. It felt like a dream, but it was real. All of it was beautifully, impossibly real. Started like a fantasy she never wanted to wake up from, but then her father showed up to give her a reality check. The doorbell rang at 4 p.m. Novi was home alone, Zach at work, the staff off for the afternoon, so she answered it herself. She wished she hadn't. Vernon Cross stood on the doorstep. He looked worse than the last time she'd seen him. His suit was rumpled, his hair greasy, his eyes bloodshot. He smelled like cheap whiskey and desperation. Novi? He smiled, and it was the smile of a man who thought he held all the cards. Look at you, all grown up and famous. Novi's blood ran cold. What are you doing here? Is that any way to greet your father? You're not my father. You never were. Vernon's smile faltered, but only for a moment. I saw your music video. Very impressive. Very lucrative. And I imagine. There it is. What do you want, Vernon? He stepped closer, and Novi forced herself not to back away. She wouldn't give him the satisfaction. I've had some setbacks, Vernon said, his voice dropping to something resembling sincerity. Some bad investments, some debts. Not my problem. It could be. His eyes hardened. You're living in a billionaire's mansion, Novi. You're dating the man who paid off my debt to Desmond Brown. You have money now, resources, and you owe me. I owe you nothing. I took you in when your mother died. I put a roof over your head. You sold me. Novi's voice cracked with 2 years of suppressed rage. You sold me like property to clear your gambling debts. You would have let me rot in a loveless marriage while you spent the money. Vernon's face twisted. That's a matter of perspective. Get off this property. Or what? You'll call security? He laughed. I'm your legal stepfather, Novi. I have rights. I could go to the press, tell them all about how my famous stepdaughter abandoned me in my time of need, how ungrateful she is, how cold. No one would believe you. Are you sure about that? Vernon's smile was ugly. I can be very convincing, and the press loves a scandal. Novi's heart pounded. He was right. She knew he was right. One well-placed story could derail everything she'd worked for. One lie could poison the public against her before she'd even really begun. What do you want? $200,000. Vernon said it casually, like he was ordering lunch. That clears my current debts and gives me a fresh start. You'll never have to see me again. I don't have, but your boyfriend does. Vernon's eyes glittered. $200,000 is pocket change to someone like Zachary Brown. I'm sure if you asked nicely, She's not asking for anything. Both Novi and Vernon spun toward the voice. Zach stood in the foyer, still in his work clothes, his charcoal eyes fixed on Vernon with an expression that made Novi's blood run cold. She'd seen Zach annoyed. She'd seen Zach irritated. She'd never seen him like this. This was fury. Cold, calculating, devastating fury. Mr. Brown, Vernon stammered, his bravado cracking. I didn't realize you're in my house. Zach's voice was quiet, which somehow made it more terrifying. Threatening the woman I love. Did you really think that was going to end well for you? Vernon's face went pale. I wasn't threatening. I was just... You were blackmailing her. Zach stepped forward and Vernon stumbled back. Trying to extort money by threatening to ruin her reputation. That's a crime, Mr. Cross. Several crimes, actually. You can't prove? I have cameras. Zach's smile was thin and cold. Every entrance to this property is monitored. Every conversation is recorded for security purposes. I have your entire visit on video. Vernon's face went from pale to gray. Now, Zach continued, his voice still terrifyingly calm. You have 2 options. Option 1. You leave this property immediately and never contact Novi again. You disappear from her life completely and permanently. In exchange, I don't send this footage to the police. Vernon swallowed hard. And option 2? Option 2. I make a phone call. Within the hour, you'll be arrested for attempted blackmail and extortion. Within the day, I'll have my lawyers dig into every shady deal you've ever made, every debt you've ever dodged, every lie you've ever told. By the time I'm done with you, prison will seem like a vacation compared to the hell I'll create for you outside of it. Silence. Vernon looked at Zach, then at Novi, then back at Zach. Whatever he saw in those charcoal black eyes convinced him. Fine, he spat. Fine, I'm leaving. Wise choice. Zach stepped aside, clearing a path to the door. And Mr. Cross, if I ever see your face again, if you ever so much as think about contacting Novi, I will end you. Financially, socially, legally. Every resource at my disposal will be aimed at making your life a living hell. Do you understand? Vernon nodded jerkily. I need to hear you say it. I understand. Good. Zach's voice was ice. Now get out of my house. Vernon fled. The door slammed behind him, and Novi burst into tears. Zach was at her side in an instant. Are you okay? Did he hurt you? Did he? I'm fine. Novi wiped her eyes, laughing through her tears. I'm fine. I can't believe you. Believe I what? You said you love me. Zach froze. What? When you were threatening Vernon, you said, the woman I love. Novi looked up at him, her eyes shining. Did you mean it? For a long moment, Zach didn't respond. His expression was complicated, surprised, confused, almost frightened. Then, slowly, Something shifted in his features. The walls came down. The armor fell away. "Yes," he said quietly. "I meant it. Zach, I don't say things I don't mean. You know that." He reached out and cupped her face in his hands, his thumbs brushing away her tears. "I love you, Novi Palmer. I don't know when it started. I don't know how it happened. I just know that you're the first person who's ever made me want to try, to be better, to be human. You've always been human." "No." He shook his head slightly. "Before you, I was surviving, going through the motions, building walls and counting them as safety. But you climbed over every wall. You sang me to sleep when I hadn't slept in years. You argued with me when everyone else just agreed. You stayed when everyone else left." His voice cracked. "You stayed, Novi. No one's ever stayed." Novi's heart shattered and rebuilt itself in the span of a breath. "I love you too," she whispered. "I love you so much it scares me sometimes. I love your almost smiles and your clinical tone and the way you say adequate like it's the highest compliment in the world. I love that you carry me to bed when I fall asleep and pretend it means nothing. I love—" He kissed her. It was gentler than their first kiss. Softer. More certain. It was the kiss of a man who had finally stopped running. When they broke apart, Novi leaned her forehead against his chest. "What happens now?" she murmured. "Now?" His arms wrapped around her, holding her close. "Now we figure it out. Together." "That sounds nice." "It sounds terrifying." Novi laughed. "That too." They stood there for a long time, unholding each other in the foyer of the mansion where everything had changed. Outside, the sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of gold and pink. Inside, two broken people were finally starting to heal. 6 months later, Novi's album dropped to critical acclaim. Within a week, she was being called the voice of a generation. Within a month, she had her first sold-out tour announced. Within 3 months, she was on the cover of Rolling Stone with the headline, "Novi Palmer, From Runaway Bride to Rising Star." The interview, which she'd done with Zach's reluctant blessing, told a sanitized version of her story. How she'd escaped a difficult family situation and found success through hard work and the support of a very special person in her life. She didn't mention the forced wedding. She didn't mention Vernon. She didn't mention the $4 million or the bathroom encounter or any of the chaos that had brought her here. Some stories were meant to stay private, but she did mention Zach. "He's not what people expect," she'd told the interviewer. "He's quiet and reserved, and he shows love in ways most people wouldn't recognize. But he's the most genuine person I've ever met. When he says something, he means it. When he commits to something, he follows through. And when he loves you," she'd smiled. "When he loves you, you never have to wonder. You just know." Now, 6 months after their first kiss in the kitchen, Novi stood on the balcony of Zenith Estate, looking out at the city lights. Footsteps behind her. She smiled without turning around. "You're home late." Meeting ran long. Zach appeared at her side, his shoulder brushing hers. "How was the show?" "Amazing, terrifying, sold out." She laughed. "I still can't believe this is my life." "I can." His voice was matter-of-fact as always. "You worked for it." "I had help." "Everyone has help. Not everyone does something with it." They stood in comfortable silence, watching the stars. "Maeve's leaving," Zach said eventually. Novi turned to him, surprised. "What?" "She gave her notice this morning. She's taking a position at a restaurant downtown, head chef." "That's good for her?" "It is." Zach paused. "She also asked me to give you a message." "What message?" She said, "Tell her I was wrong, about everything." Novi felt something loosen in her chest. "I hope she's happy." "I think she will be." Zach turned to face her, and in the moonlight, his charcoal eyes seemed softer, or warmer. She finally let go of something she was never meant to have. "That's very philosophical for you." "I've been practicing." Novi laughed and reached for his hand. He took it without hesitation. No flinching, no tension, no mental reminder that touch was okay. They'd come so far. "I have something for you," Zach said. Novi's eyebrows rose. "A gift? From you? Who are you and what have you done with Zachary Brown?" "Very funny." He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. Novi's heart stopped. "Zach, before you panic, it's not that kind of box." He opened it to reveal a delicate silver necklace with a small pendant shaped like a musical note. "I saw it and thought of you, that's all." Novi's eyes welled with tears. It's beautiful." "You're crying." "Happy tears." "I'll never understand happy tears." "I know." She laughed through her sniffles. "That's okay." Zach lifted the necklace from the box and moved behind her, fastening it around her neck. His fingers brushed her skin, and she shivered. "Perfect," he murmured. Novi turned to face him, the pendant resting against her collarbone. "Thank you. For everything." "You don't have to keep thanking me." "I know, but I want to." She rose on her tiptoes and pressed a soft kiss to his lips. "Thank you for saving me in that hotel room. Thank you for paying off Vernon's debt. Thank you for letting me stay and helping me find Darius and singing me to sleep." "You sang me to sleep." "Same thing." She grinned. "Thank you for loving me, Zach. Even when it was hard. Even when you didn't understand it." Zach was quiet for a moment. Then, slowly, he smiled. Not an almost smile. Not a twitch of the lips. A real, genuine, full smile. It transformed his entire face, softened the sharp edges, warmed the cold features, made him look like the man he might have been if life hadn't made him build so many walls. Novi had never seen anything more beautiful. "I should be thanking you," he said quietly. "Before you, I was surviving. Now I'm living. That's because of you. It's because of us. Us." He tested the word like he was tasting fine wine. "I like that." "Me too." They stood on the balcony as the stars wheeled overhead, two people who had found each other against all odds. One a runaway bride who had hidden in a stranger's bathroom. One a billionaire who had forgotten how to feel. And both of them broken. Both of them healing. Both of them, finally, home. From a window below, Maeve watched them from the kitchen window. She had come back to collect the last of her things, a few personal items she'd left behind, some recipes she'd developed over the years. She hadn't expected to see them. But there they were, standing on the balcony, silhouetted against the stars. Zach's arm was around Novi's waist. Novi's head was on his shoulder. And Zach was smiling. Maeve had worked for him for 8 years. She had loved him, in her own quiet way, for almost as long. She had memorized his moods, anticipated his needs, told herself that eventually he would see her. But he had never once smiled at her like that. He had never smiled at anyone like that. Until Novi. Tears rolled down Maeve's cheeks, but she didn't wipe them away. This was goodbye. Not just to the job, but to the hope she'd been clinging to for years. The hope that someday, somehow, he would look at her and see something worth loving. He never would, because his heart had always been waiting for someone else. "Be happy," Maeve whispered to the window. "Both of you." Then she picked up her box of belongings and walked out of Zenith Estate for the last time. 1 year later, Novi's concert was the biggest of her career. 20,000 people packed the arena, singing along to every word. The lights were blinding, the energy electric, the noise deafening. And in the VIP box, watching with pride in his charcoal black eyes, was Zach. Novi found him in the crowd. She always found him, and smiled. He raised his hand in a small wave. "I love you," she mouthed. I love you too," he mouthed back. Then she turned back to the crowd and launched into her final song. It was the song she'd written for him. The song about starlight and hope and finding your way home. The song about a woman who had been lost and a man who had helped her find herself. The song about love. When the last note faded, The arena erupted. Novi stood in the center of the stage, tears streaming down her face, and thought about how far she'd come. 1 year ago, she had been running through a hotel in a wedding dress, hiding from a forced marriage, praying for a miracle. Now she was a star. More importantly, she was happy. And standing in the VIP box, watching her shine, was the man who had made it all possible. The man who had saved her. The man who had loved her. And the man she was going to spend the rest of her life with. Sometimes, the worst moments of our lives lead us to the best ones. Novi Palmer ran from a nightmare and stumbled into a dream. She found love where she least expected it, in the arms of a man who didn't know how to feel, who had to learn to open his heart one day at a time. She learned that strength isn't about being unbreakable. It's about breaking and choosing to put yourself back together anyway. And she learned that no matter how dark things seem, no matter how trapped you feel, there's always a door somewhere. Sometimes you just have to be brave enough to open it. So if you're out there, stuck in a situation that feels impossible, remember Novi's story. Remember that your escape might be one door away. Remember that your love story might be waiting in the most unexpected place. And remember that you, yes, you, are worth fighting for. If this story made you laugh, cry, or scream at your screen, do me a favor. Share it with someone who needs to hear that better days are coming. Subscribe if you haven't already, and hit that notification bell so you never miss another story. And comment below. What was your favorite moment in Novi and Zach's story? The bathroom scene? The first kiss? The wedding? I read every single comment, and I can't wait to hear from you. Take care, y'all. See you in the next one.